Hi there. I'm Lynn. Yeah, the bartender. My sister told me I wasn't elegant enough to be at her wedding. She erased me from the guest list, from the family group chat, even from our childhood home. What they didn't know? That house? It still had my name on the deed. They called me just a bartender, but why were they all so eager to move into the mansion I paid the taxes on? They pushed me out quietly, hoping I'd stay silent. But what happens when the one you underestimated finally says no? The champagne flutes clinked with hollow cheer, but something in the air had already turned. I stood near the corner of the banquet hall, trying to look like I belonged there, like I hadn't just been introduced to Logan's family as my sister Lynn. She's a bartender. That word hung heavier than the crystal chandelier above our heads. Bartender. Like it wasn't a real job. Like I wasn't the one who had helped Gypsy cover rent during her first year of law school, or bought her groceries when she blew her stipend on manicures and concert tickets. I knew that tone when Gypsy said it. Light, dismissive, her smile too polished. She used it the way people say, "She's harmless." And Logan's mom, Wanda, let her gaze slide over me the same way you'd glance at a stain on your white carpet, quick and impolite. I excused myself after 15 minutes. The fake smiles, the picture posing, the nervous jokes about seating charts, it was all background noise once the label, just a bartender, was out there. I didn't even get a hug when I left. Gypsy was too busy laughing with Wanda about the flower arrangements. I sat in my car for a good while, didn't even start the engine. Just stared at the dashboard and thought about how many times I'd picked Gypsy up when no one else did. I remembered the night she got dumped junior year and cried on my couch for hours. I held her hair back when she puked from too much wine at her graduation. I even drove her to her first job interview in heels she borrowed from me. But all of that vanished behind a single line. She's just a bartender. A few nights later, I was back at the bar I owned, cleaning glasses after closing. My bar was small, cozy, mostly regulars. No DJ, no gimmicks. Just whiskey, music, and familiarity. I'd built it from scratch. Took me 7 years to pay off the loan, but I did it. Without anyone's help. I was wiping down the counter when my phone lit up. A message from Gypsy. "Hey, sorry if things felt weird the other night. Wanda can be particular. I'm just trying to make a good impression." No apology, no ownership, just deflection, as always. It stung, but not in a surprising way. I was used to being the behind-the-scenes sister, the one who pays but doesn't pose, the one who gives but never gets credit. That night, I pulled out an old spiral notebook from the back office drawer. It had been collecting dust under receipts and menus. I started writing, not out of sadness, but clarity. I wrote down every time I'd covered for her, helped her, saved her, not to guilt her, not to use it against her, just to remember. Because something told me, if I didn't keep the facts straight, someone else was going to rewrite them for me. A week passed. The wedding planning was in full swing. I hadn't received any update about bridesmaid fittings or rehearsal dinners. When I texted Gypsy to ask about it, she replied, "We're still finalizing the list. It's been chaos." Right. The following Saturday, I drove over to drop off a box of things she'd left at my place months ago. When I got to her apartment, the door was cracked open. I heard voices, Wanda and Gypsy again. I mean, you don't want your big day cluttered by, people who don't exactly fit the vibe, Wanda said. Gypsy didn't respond, at least not loudly, but I didn't hear any protest. No, "Mom, stop," or "She's my sister," just silence. Complicit, cowardly silence. I didn't knock. I left the box at her doorstep and drove home. That night, I stayed up late going through old photos, birthdays, road trips, inside jokes. I paused on one, the two of us at a state fair, cotton candy in hand, laughing so hard we cried. That was before law school, before the Callahans, before vibes mattered more than people. I didn't cry, but something in me hardened, like a door quietly closing from the inside. The next morning, I got a call from one of our cousins, Krista. She sounded awkward. "Hey, just a heads up. Gypsy told Aunt Leah that you're not really coming to the wedding. She said you've been busy with, bar stuff." I clenched the phone. "Did she now?" "Yeah, I just wanted you to know. Thought maybe it wasn't true." I thanked her and hung up. I didn't feel rage. Not yet. Just something cold and steady forming underneath my ribs. Later that week, while I was placing a liquor order, another message popped in from Gypsy. Just confirmed the venue. It's going to be stunning. Wanda's covering most of it. I can't wait for you to see it. If you can make it. If I could make it. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about a wedding. This wasn't about tablecloths and champagne flutes. This was about rewriting roles, erasing history. She was positioning herself as the woman from the clean slate family, not the girl raised on discounted groceries and second-hand uniforms. And in that version of the story, there was no room for me. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my calendar, highlighted her wedding date, and wrote 2 words in red: stand by. I didn't know what I'd do yet, but I wasn't going to beg for a seat at a table I built for her in the first place. I didn't have a plan. Not yet. But the longer I stared at that red ink on my calendar, the more certain I became of one thing. I wasn't going to pretend like this was normal, like it didn't hurt, like being excluded from my own sister's wedding was just a simple misunderstanding. It was the following Thursday. I had just finished wiping down the tables at the bar, my body tired but my mind wound tight. The dinner rush had ended. A soft hum from the fridge compressor and the occasional honk from the street outside were all that filled the quiet. Then my phone rang. It was Gypsy. I stared at the screen a moment longer than usual before I answered. "Hey," I said, neutral. "Hey," she replied, drawing it out like this was a casual check-in, like nothing between us had shifted. "So, I wanted to talk to you about the wedding." My stomach tensed. "We've decided to keep it small," she said, like she was reading off a script. "Just immediate family and close friends." I stood there, still holding a towel, my hand frozen mid-wipe. Aren't I immediate family? There was a pause, so quick you'd miss it if you didn't know her. But I did. "Well, yes, of course," she said, but the tone was soft, guilty. "It's just, Wanda thinks it'll be more elegant if the guest list stays tight. You know, intimate." "Elegant?" I echoed. "Yeah, like, polished, less chaotic." "And I'm chaotic?" I asked, my voice sharper now. No, it's not about that. It's just, seating is tricky, and Logan's family, they're kind of particular." "Particular," I repeated, biting back the heat behind my eyes. "You mean particular about having someone like me in the photos?" Gypsy didn't deny it. "It's just one day, Lynn. One day that apparently defines our relationship." Her voice dropped into that fake sweet register I knew too well. "Don't make this about you." I laughed once, dry and sharp. "It was never about me, Gypsy. That's the damn point." She didn't say goodbye. Neither did I. I hung up, tossed the towel onto the bar, and stood there, staring at the empty room like it held the answers I was missing. Later that night, I called our mom. If anyone could see through this ridiculousness, it would be her. Or so I thought. She picked up on the second ring. "Mom," I began, skipping pleasantries, "did you know I'm not invited to the wedding?" There was a long pause on her end. Then came the sigh. "You know how your sister gets. She wants things a certain way. And this is her big day." "That's your response?" I asked, stunned. "You're seriously okay with your daughter being left out like she's some second cousin?" "I'm not okay with it," she said quickly, but her tone was already retreating. "But I understand it. She's under pressure, Lynn. Logan's parents have expectations." "And what about me?" My voice cracked, not from weakness but sheer disbelief. "Do I not get anything? After everything I've done for her?" "Lynn, don't start keeping score," Mom warned, that tired edge creeping in. "That's not what family does." I almost threw the phone across the room. "That's exactly what family does, apparently," I snapped. "Keeps score, just not in my favor." She didn't have a comeback. She never really did when the truth made things messy. "She's always been delicate, Lynn," she added weakly, "and you've always been the strong one." That wasn't a compliment. That was a justification for letting me get hurt again and again. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. But inside, something was already breaking free. I started remembering how I gave up my college acceptance to help pay rent after Dad left. How I worked 2 jobs so Gypsy could take unpaid internships and still have gas in her car. How I sent her $300 when she got a parking boot in downtown Phoenix and begged me not to tell Mom. I remembered all the birthdays I planned, the surprise cake I baked the year she got dumped, the time I fought with her landlord when he tried to evict her after a missed rent. And now? Now I was not the vibe. The next day I opened Instagram to find a photo from one of her bridesmaids, a digital invitation mock-up with the caption, "It's official! Can't wait to celebrate this power couple." The guest list was visible in the screenshot. I zoomed in. There were people on there I hadn't spoken to since high school. Distant cousins, her college sorority sisters, a few coworkers I didn't even know she still talked to. But not me. I searched again. Nothing. I scrolled down to the comments. Wanda had replied to one. "Such a beautiful lineup. Can't wait to meet them all." That did it. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't logistics. It was deliberate. I wasn't just uninvited. I was being rewritten out of the picture, erased like I'd never mattered at all. By the time Saturday rolled around, the air felt different. It wasn't just the dry Arizona heat settling into my skin. It was something sharper. A shift. Like all the years I'd spent swallowing disrespect were suddenly curdling inside me. I'd received 5 voicemails from Mom over the last 2 days. She didn't mention the wedding fallout directly, just her usual passive-aggressive tactics. "Call me when you're less dramatic," or "Don't let this silly thing come between sisters." That kind of denial had always been her brand, but this time I responded. I asked her to meet me at a cafe just outside Old Town, halfway between her condo and my bar. I chose it for the neutral ground. Bright walls, friendly waitstaff, and coffee that tasted like someone cared while making it. She arrived 10 minutes late, wearing that look she always wore when she needed something, but didn't want to admit it. Tight smile, manicured guilt. "Hi, sweetie," she said, sitting across from me like nothing was broken. "You look tired." "Long week," I said, keeping it curt. After a few sips of iced tea and small talk about weather and traffic, she finally got to it. "So, Gypsy's really been stressed about the wedding." I said nothing. "She's just trying so hard to do everything right, you know? Planning a wedding is no joke these days." Still nothing. "That's why I wanted to run something by you," she continued, setting down her glass. "We were thinking, it might be a beautiful gesture, really generous, if we transferred the deed to Grandma's house. As a wedding gift." I blinked. "I'm sorry. What?" She leaned in like she was sharing something sacred. "You're not using all the rooms. It's a lot of space. And that property could really help Gypsy and Logan start strong. It's symbolic. A blessing from one generation to the next." My voice didn't rise, but my spine straightened. "That house was left to me," I said flatly. "Grandma's will is very clear." "I know, honey," she said, tone syrupy, "but you're not even married. No kids. And Gypsy? Gypsy isn't entitled to something just because she's getting a white dress and a hashtag," I snapped. Her smile cracked for a second. "Don't be ugly about this." "I'm not being ugly. I'm being factual," I said. "And let's be real, Mom. You didn't care about that house until Gypsy found out it was paid off." Her mouth opened, then closed. I stood up, left a 20 on the table, and said, "That house is not a gift. It's mine. And the fact that you even suggested it tells me everything I need to know." I didn't wait for her to follow me out. I drove straight to the house. The sun was brutal, casting sharp shadows along the stucco walls. As I turned into the driveway, I noticed a silver SUV parked just outside the gate. Strange. I stepped out of my car and heard voices from the backyard. Male, professional. Curious, I walked around the side of the house and nearly froze. Russell Callahan, Logan's father, was out back with a man in a polo shirt and khakis, holding blueprints. "The pool area has to go," Russell was saying. "We'll expand the patio here, maybe add a fire pit. Logan's wife deserves something timeless." I didn't move. They didn't even see me. They were planning renovations, on my house, like I was already gone, like I never existed. Russell clapped the guy on the back and said, "Let's get preliminary numbers by next week. I want this locked before the ceremony." Before the ceremony. I walked away before they noticed me. I couldn't trust my voice yet. That evening I called Krista. If anyone would shoot straight, it was her. "Hey," I said, pacing the kitchen with a beer in my hand. "You got a minute?" Please, she muttered. This family always gives me something to drink over. I laughed, but only a little. I need to ask you something. Were you ever officially invited to the wedding? She snorted. Not after the bridal brunch. Wanda said they were recalibrating the guest list. Translation: trimming the parts that didn't sparkle on Instagram. I leaned against the fridge. You too? Oh yeah, I heard Wanda tell Gypsy. Anyone who reminds them of where they came from should be left out. The words hit like cold water. This wasn't just a snub. It was erasure, carefully curated, deliberate. This isn't personal, Krista added. It's strategic. You're not just a bartender to them, Lynn. You're proof. Proof that their fairy tale is fake. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That night, after I locked up the bar, I went home, opened my laptop, and logged into the county assessor's site. I pulled up the property deed. My name stared back at me in bold. Lynn Delaney, sole owner, no liens, no shared titles. I clicked through the PDFs, scanned the notarized documents, and smiled. They wanted a wedding gift? They'd get one they'd never forget. I closed the laptop slowly, like the weight of the screen held the weight of the decision I'd just made. I didn't slam it. I didn't pace. I just sat there in the dim light of my office, the hum of the ice machine in the back of the bar playing like white noise in my ears. Then the phone rang. The name on the screen made me pause. Dad. Dennis rarely called. He was the type of man who let Mom handle the messy stuff, emotions, disputes, apologies. His presence was always quieter, a passive force that preferred looking the other way than facing anything head-on. I let it ring once more, then answered. Hey. Hey, sweetheart, he said, like nothing had happened. You got a minute? I leaned back in my chair. Sure. He cleared his throat like it hurt. I just wanted to touch base. Gypsy, she's feeling overwhelmed. You know how she gets. She's also uninvited me to her wedding and tried to move into my house behind my back. A pause. Well, I don't know all the details, but your sister's under pressure. Wanda's got these expectations, and Logan's family is... they're old school. Old school doesn't mean cruel, I replied, voice even. I'm not saying she's right, he said quickly. I was thinking, maybe there's a middle ground. What if you let her use the house? Just for a bit. As a gesture. That was the moment the calm turned ice cold in my chest. No, I said simply. Silence. I'm not asking you to give it away, he added, gentle, measured. Just show her there's still room for forgiveness. No, I repeated. There's no room for lies, manipulation, or entitlement. Not anymore. He sighed, and it wasn't even frustrated. It was resigned. Like he'd known I'd say that, but he had to try for the sake of family performance. Okay, he said after a while. I just wanted to ask. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. Thanks for calling. We hung up, and I stared at the ceiling of my office for a long moment before grabbing my keys. That night, I walked through every room of the house. Grandma's house. My house. The one she left me not because I asked, but because I stayed when no one else did. And then came the memory. One I hadn't let myself sit with for a long time. It was right after Grandma passed. I'd just returned from the funeral home, still in a black dress, shoes dusty from the church parking lot. Dad had followed me into the kitchen while I made coffee. You know, he'd started carefully, a lot of families put homes like this in multiple names. That way it stays protected. Protected from who? I asked. He looked away. You just never know. I told him no. Not because I thought he'd steal it, but because I'd watched them all circle around Grandma in her final months like vultures disguised in good intentions. After that, dinners felt stiffer. Calls came less. I'd already started learning what it meant to be the one who said no. And here I was, doing it again. The next morning, as I restocked behind the bar before opening, Logan came in alone. He leaned on the counter like he had a casual question, but his eyes were scanning me like he was studying a test he hadn't prepared for. Morning, he said. Morning, I replied, not offering more. So, you still living at the Tonto house? I tilted my head. Yep, why? He shrugged, trying to act like he didn't already have a reason. I heard Gypsy say something about moving in early. Thought maybe you were... Transitioning out. I smiled, but not warmly. She must have gotten ahead of herself. Or maybe ahead of reality. He blinked. So, she's not… No, I said. She's not. He shifted on his feet. Right, cool. Just wanted to clear that up. When he left, I stood still for a moment. Then I walked into my tiny office, opened my inbox, and started typing. Subject, property clarification body. This is formal notice that the property at 1208 Tonto Pass is not under consideration for transfer or occupancy. Please inform all involved parties accordingly. Any future communication on this matter should be directed through official legal channels. I reread it twice. Short, professional, no drama. Then I hit send. They wanted to act like I was invisible? Fine. But I'd learned something in the quiet. Silence is not the same as surrender. I wasn't raising my voice, but I was raising my wall. The following afternoon, I was wiping down the bar before we opened when the front door creaked open. We weren't supposed to unlock for another hour, but there he was. Logan. No gypsy, no entourage. Just him, standing in his polo shirt like someone trying hard not to look shaken. Hey, he said, voice a little too casual. I didn't look up. We're closed for another hour. I know, he replied, stepping in anyway. I needed to ask you something. It's been bugging me. That got my attention. I set the towel down and leaned my elbows on the bar. Shoot, he hesitated, eyes darting to the floor before meeting mine. Were you the one paying for Gypsy's law school? I didn't flinch. Yes. All of it? Every semester, every book, every credit hour? He ran a hand over his mouth. She told me her parents paid. I raised an eyebrow. Did she also tell you they took out a second mortgage for her dorm furniture? His jaw clenched, a muscle twitching along his cheek. No, she didn't mention any of that. She wouldn't. Silence stretched between us like a rubber band pulled too tight. He finally let out a breath. Why would she lie about that? Because saying her sister paid makes the story messier, I said. Makes the fairy tale crack. He nodded slowly, then walked out without another word. That same night, several miles away at Gypsy and Logan's place, Wanda was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through a stack of wedding vendor contracts when something caught her eye. A stray envelope had gotten tucked between catering invoices. She opened it absent-mindedly, expecting a bill. But it wasn't a bill. It was a payment schedule. Tuition, Arizona state law, account, Gypsy Delaney. Payer, Lynn Delaney. Her brows furrowed. She flipped the page. 3 years' worth of transactions, regular, consistent, always from Lynn. Her fingers froze mid-turn. She reread it, slower this time, then sat back in her chair. The timeline didn't lie, and neither did bank records. By morning, it had already traveled like wildfire through the hidden channels families used to talk without ever admitting they were talking. I knew something had shifted when Marla, Gypsy's maid of honor, unfollowed me on Instagram. But the real signal came when Logan came back. Not to the bar this time, but to my apartment just after sunset. I opened the door, already guessing why he was there. She said you insisted, he started without greeting. That she didn't ask for help, that you wanted to feel needed. I crossed my arms. That's a story people tell when they don't want to admit how much they took. He looked tired. She let me believe you were bitter, dramatic, petty, said you were obsessed with looking like the hero. And yet, I said softly, she let me foot the bill. Quietly. For 3 years. He nodded, shame creeping into his voice. She never even told me your last name was on those loan forms. I didn't say, you should have asked. I didn't need to. The air between us said it for me. After he left, I returned to my desk. My hands moved before my brain even caught up. Subject: cease misuse of identity and property body. To Gypsy Delaney, Darlene Delaney. This message serves as a formal warning. Any continued reference to my name, address, business, or property for the purpose of social appearances, representation, or assumption will be considered intentional misrepresentation and may result in legal consequences. This includes, but is not limited to, claiming residency at 1208 Tonto Pass, referencing financial support not authorized for public disclosure, suggesting business affiliations with Ember Bar. I trust this will be the last time I need to address this matter informally. Sincerely, Lynn Callahan, owner and operator, Ember Bar. I reread it, adjusted nothing, then hit send. Let the fallout happen wherever it wanted. I'd spent too many years trying to soften the edges, hoping my silence would earn me peace. But silence had bought me a front-row seat to my own erasure. Not anymore. If they wanted a war of whispers, I was ready to speak clearly. No rage, no tears, just the truth. And the truth, once out, has a way of cutting deeper than any scream. The masks were off now, and I wasn't the one left exposed. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug of lukewarm coffee, scrolling through old emails, invoices, statements, anything that showed just how many lines they'd crossed. By morning, the soft hum of my laptop was the only sound in the apartment, the sunrise cutting a harsh orange line through the blinds. At 9 a.m. sharp, I walked into my lawyer's office. Deborah knew me well enough not to waste time on small talk. She took one look at my face and asked, "Ready to make it official?" I nodded. "No more informal warnings. I want to rescind all implied access, permanently." She raised an eyebrow, then motioned to her assistant. "Get the property revocation forms and draft a cease and desist." Within 20 minutes, we had 3 identical envelopes, each addressed and ready: Gypsy Delaney, Darlene Delaney, Wanda Harrison. Inside, the letter was crystal clear. No access, no occupation, no use of likeness, address, or implication of connection. Everything was covered, from the house to my name. I signed the bottom with a sense of finality I hadn't known I needed. The copies were sealed and sent. That should have been enough. But it wasn't. Because 2 days later, I got a call from my bank. "Hi, Miss Callahan. We're calling to confirm a private loan application under your name. It triggered a verification because of mismatched contact information." I felt my stomach drop. "What loan?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "A $25,000 personal line of credit, digitally signed 3 months ago. But it was never finalized. The system flagged it when someone tried to reapply last night." I asked for a copy. When it arrived, I opened the PDF and stared at the signature. It wasn't mine. It was close, my name, my cursive, but the C in Callahan was off, the angle wrong, a forgery, Gypsy. She hadn't just manipulated the narrative, she'd manipulated my identity. My hand shook as I forwarded the document to Deborah. She called within minutes, already furious. "This is bank fraud. We'll press charges if you want to move forward." I didn't respond right away. I just kept reading the fake form, the way someone stares at a betrayal that's too intricate to be spontaneous. This took time. This took planning. And while I processed that truth, the internet started to burn. It began with a screenshot, a post on Reddit from someone who went to high school with Gypsy. The caption, "So grateful to my parents for gifting us our dream house # wedding bliss." The house was mine. The photo was recent. People started asking questions. One user dug deeper, found public property records, and posted the deed, with my name highlighted. Then someone tagged the Ember Bar account. I didn't reply. I didn't argue. Instead, I reposted the deed on my own profile and typed one line beneath it: "No lies live long." The post went viral. People started DMing me, some curious, some cruel, a few sympathetic. But I didn't care about sympathy. I cared about facts. And the facts were finally speaking louder than Gypsy ever had. The following week, wedding invitations began landing in inboxes and mailboxes across Scottsdale. Each one carried a small white insert card. "Please note the wedding venue has changed due to unforeseen circumstances." Translation? They'd lost the house. They could no longer fake their way into it. That evening, as I was closing up the bar, my phone buzzed. Wanda. I debated ignoring it, then picked up. "This is cruel," she snapped. "What you're doing to Gypsy, it's spiteful, vindictive." I didn't yell. I didn't curse. Instead, I said calmly, "Cruel was pretending I didn't exist while cashing checks from my account." She paused, then hung up. Good, because for the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting. I was setting the pace. They built a fantasy on my silence, and now I was answering with facts. No rage, no scream, Just a line they couldn't step over anymore. They took my kindness for silence, so I answered with signatures instead of screams. The fallout didn't wait for a quiet hour. It crashed through the doors of my bar 10 minutes after the Friday rush began. I was behind the counter, pouring a rye on the rocks for a regular, when the door slammed open. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. The tension in the room shifted. Conversation stalled. The clink of glasses froze midair. Gypsy's heels clicked across the floor like gunshots. "You ruined everything," she screamed. She was red-faced, mascara smudged and shaking with fury. Her voice sliced through the room, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. I set the drink down gently and walked out from behind the bar, wiping my hands on a towel. "You want to do this here?" I asked, my voice low but steady. "You embarrassed me online, got me kicked out of my own venue. Logan won't even look at me anymore." I didn't flinch. "You embarrassed yourself. I just stopped covering for you." Her mouth twisted. "You always had to be the martyr, didn't you?" "No," I said. "I was just the one paying the bills while you played make-believe." Her eyes darted to the crowd watching. "You're a bitter bartender. That's all you'll ever be." "And yet I own the house you tried to steal," I replied coolly. "Guess being just a bartender comes with perks." A few chuckles rippled through the room. She spun around and stormed out, but not before hurling one last dig. "You'll die alone, Lynn." I didn't respond. She wanted chaos, a breakdown, a scene. I gave her boundaries. Later that night, just as I was locking up, I saw a shadow at my gate. Darlene, waiting like a ghost from a past I no longer served. She wore a trench coat too heavy for the evening heat, arms crossed like she was holding herself together. "Can we talk?" she asked. I didn't move to open the gate. "You're already here." She stepped closer to the bars. "I just wanted the family to look good, for once." I tilted my head. "You mean you wanted the illusion of family to look good?" "Lynn," she whispered, "you turned Logan against her. You've destroyed her." "No," I said. "He saw the truth. I just stopped hiding it for you." She blinked, searching for another excuse, another lie, something to put the weight back on my shoulders. But I had nothing left to carry for her. "I never wanted it to come to this," she murmured. "And yet," I replied, "here we are." She left without another word. The next morning, Scottsdale's social media pages exploded. Photos from Wanda's last-minute bridal brunch were everywhere. A half-empty venue, a fake floral arch, a distant cousin mid-toast standing with a shaky champagne flute and saying, "You should be ashamed, Gypsy. All of you." The post went viral. Hashtags followed. #fakebride, #barsistertruth, #thankslynn. I didn't share a word, didn't repost a thing. But my bar's Yelp page got 20 new 5-star reviews in 2 hours. By the time Sunday rolled around, Ember was packed. Not for the drinks, though those helped, but because people had started seeing the full picture. The woman they tried to write out was the one holding it all together. That evening, I sat on my porch with a glass of red and my laptop. Notifications pinged nonstop, but I ignored them. Instead, I opened a spreadsheet titled Expansion 2025, a new patio, extended hours, maybe even live music on weekends. Then, a text from Logan popped up. "If you need an investor, I'm in. No strings, just respect." I didn't respond immediately. I just stared at it, letting the quiet of my home wrap around me. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rebuilding. Louder, stronger, clearer. They thought I'd break, but I just rebuilt. Louder. The cursor blinked beneath Logan's message, slow and steady like a soft pulse. I let it sit there for a while, untouched. No pressure, no expectations. Just a quiet moment of something I hadn't felt from him, or really anyone, in a long time. Respect. Not performative, not conditional. Just quiet, unforced, and real. 3 days before the wedding, everything around me felt like it was holding its breath. The sky, heavy with unspilled rain, hung low over the city. Inside, that same pressure mirrored itself in people's silences, in the way conversations faltered when I entered a room, in group chats that had once lit up my phone, but now sat in silence, unread and unfinished. The hush didn't bother me anymore. I had outgrown needing noise. That morning, instead of a text, Logan knocked on the back door of the bar. He knew better than to use the front. I opened it and stepped aside without a word. The familiarity of it struck me. How many times had we done this before? Not dramatic entrances, not grand declarations, just showing up. He looked worn, not broken, not confused, just tired, like someone who'd finally run out of the energy to keep carrying a lie. "I canceled the wedding," he said. His voice didn't shake. I didn't blink, didn't flinch. I just looked at him and waited. "She lied," he continued, "about everything, her job, the tuition debt, the house she said her aunt left her, even the savings she told me we had. Wanda tried to cover it up, said it would blow over, that if we had a beautiful wedding, everything else would fall into place." He exhaled like it had taken him a week to find the courage for that breath. "I thought you were bitter," he added. "I told myself that you were angry and couldn't let go of the past, but you were just honest. That's the part I didn't want to look at." I let his words land, not pushing them away but not clinging to them either. Then I nodded, once. "I loved who I thought she was," he said, voice low. "But you never pretended to be anyone but yourself. And you," I said, "finally stopped pretending you didn't know the difference." He didn't try to explain further. Didn't reach for my hand. Didn't stay longer than he needed to. Just said, "I'm sorry," and left. And that was enough. Later that day, my phone buzzed. "Darlene, Gypsy won't leave the bed, says she's lost everything." I typed out a reply. She threw everything away. Then I sat there staring at it. My thumb hovered over send, but instead, I hit delete. Some things didn't need to be said. Not anymore. I set the phone down face first on the counter, walked across the kitchen to the old wooden shelf beneath the window. There, framed in a cheap metal border, was a photo, me and Gypsy, kids in matching overalls, mud-streaked and wild from the creek behind Grandma's house. That day, we were untouchable. Before secrets, before betrayal. I took the frame down gently and placed it in a drawer. No ceremony, no sentiment, just a quiet decision. Some memories need time in the dark to stop hurting. Maybe one day they'd make sense. Or maybe they wouldn't. Either way, they didn't belong on display anymore. By early evening, Logan and I crossed paths again. Not in a bar, not in a bedroom, in my lawyer's office. This wasn't closure. It wasn't reconciliation. It was business. He sat across from me as we reviewed the paperwork. Expansion plans for the bar, new patio seating, acoustic Sundays, a kitchen remodel we'd been planning back when everything still felt like potential. He signed the agreement without hesitation and slid it across the table. "You believed in her," I said. "I don't blame you for that." He looked at me then, not with apology, but something closer to clarity. "I believe in you now. That matters more." There was no dramatic moment, no hug, no tension, just two people finally seeing each other without the fog of illusion. That night, I climbed up to the rooftop of Ember Bar. The sun was slipping low, painting the edges of the city gold. The breeze carried the first real chill of the season, the kind that signals the end of a long, exhausting summer. I leaned on the railing, glass of water in hand, and watched as the city lights flickered on one by one. Down on the streets, the world kept moving. No one knew what the day had meant to me, and that was okay. For years, I'd convinced myself that peace would come the moment I was welcomed back into the rooms I'd been pushed out of. That one day, they'd understand me, accept me, let me back in. But standing there, the city stretching out before me, I realized peace wasn't about being let back in. It was about not needing those rooms at all. Let them rewrite their stories. I wasn't in them anymore. I was writing my own. And no, I hadn't burned it all down. I'd just walked away and let the fire speak for itself. 2 weeks had passed since the wedding that wasn't. There were no phone calls, no backhanded texts, no cryptic family group chats lighting up with passive-aggressive quotes. Just silence, and it was the kindest thing they'd ever given me. The day Gypsy was supposed to become Mrs. Logan Callahan came and went like any other Saturday. I spent it restocking bottles, scribbling cocktail ideas in my notebook, and serving drinks to a packed house that didn't care about curated guest lists or Instagram-worthy vows. They cared about laughing, about the right pour, about being seen. No one asked about her. No one whispered around me like they used to. It was like the universe had quietly decided to match my energy. No more performing, no more pretending. The truth had done its job. And now, I had mine. Krista dropped by the next morning with fresh bagels and the kind of hug that doesn't ask for anything in return. "She's back with your mom," she said over coffee. "Haven't seen either of them at the store in days." I just nodded. No witty reply, no biting remark. Apparently, Russell had stepped back from all things Callahan. Wanda had turned her focus toward local charity events, still smiling, still networking, still pretending her legacy wasn't unraveling thread by thread. The house sat empty. Sometimes I drove by it on my way to the supplier. The yard was overgrown, the shutters half closed. It looked like a forgotten stage after the actors had gone home, and that suited me just fine. A week later, we hosted brunch on the new patio. Just a few tables, mismatched chairs, string lights from Etsy I'd strung up myself. Krista came again, this time with her partner and their twins. A couple of my cousins showed up too, the ones who had quietly distanced themselves from the drama, but never from me. Even Logan dropped by, not with flowers or apologies, but with a signed vendor contract and a fresh batch of coffee beans from a roaster downtown. We toasted with black coffee and scrambled eggs. It wasn't glamorous. It was better. Real. Simple. The kind of morning you don't post about but remember anyway. "You okay?" Krista asked me once the tables were cleared and the laughter died down. "I'm good," I said, and meant it. She smiled. "You look it." That night, after everyone had left and the patio lights were turned off, I went upstairs to my apartment. There was a box in my closet I hadn't touched in years. It held old photos, drawings, notes passed between us in middle school, a charm bracelet we both wore until Gypsy traded hers for something more adult. I didn't open each item. I didn't cry. I just placed one more thing in it. The wedding invitation, the one that never had my name on it. Then I closed the lid, slid it to the top shelf, and left it there. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it to remember. Because forgetting isn't healing, it's erasing. And I wasn't erasing anything anymore. Not myself. Not the past. Just placing it where it belongs. Behind me. I didn't need revenge. I just needed to remember who I was. And this time, I'm not forgetting. Sometimes, standing up for yourself doesn't look like a fight. It looks like silence, boundaries, walking away, without needing anyone to chase you. I used to think family meant unconditional love, that no matter how much I was overlooked, if I just kept showing up, kept giving, kept sacrificing, maybe one day they'd see me. But here's what I've learned. You don't have to burn yourself down to keep someone else's version of family warm. You are allowed to be the one who says enough. You are allowed to protect what you've built, even if it means letting go of people you thought would always be there. And to anyone watching this who's ever been erased, used, or made to feel small, you are not invisible. You are not overreacting. You are not just a bartender or just anything. You are the author of your own story. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is simply to stop apologizing for writing it your way. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever walked away from a relationship or a situation that no longer saw your worth? Do you believe cutting ties can be an act of love for yourself? Let's open up in the comments, share your story, your thoughts, or even just where you're watching from. If this video spoke to you, type 1 in the comments to let me know it reached you. If it didn't, I want to hear that too. Tell me why. It helps us grow. And if you're comfortable, drop your city or state. I'd love to see where you're tuning in from. And hey, if this kind of story resonates with you, if you believe in truth, family, and healing, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more real, raw stories that hit home. Thanks for watching.